Today, we're diving into one of the most pressing issues the UK faces: border security and illegal migration. It's a problem that's rapidly growing, and yet the government's response feels worryingly inadequate. Are the promises of action just empty words? And with resources stretched to the limit, is this policy approach sustainable? Join us as we reveal the truth behind the government's latest moves on migration and what they mean for every British citizen. The issue of migration, both legal and illegal, has long been a complex and deeply contentious topic in the UK. For decades, successive governments have introduced policies aimed at regulating the flow of people coming into the country with varying degrees of success. Historically, the UK has prided itself on being a welcoming nation for those fleeing persecution, economic hardship, or political instability. But in recent years, the surge in illegal migration, coupled with an increasingly strained economy, has created a backlash. Public sentiment is shifting as communities grapple with the challenges posed by growing populations, and citizens question whether the system in place truly serves the national interest. This crisis didn't arise overnight. In fact, the UK has seen spikes in migration during specific periods. Post-World War II, for instance, when there was a call for labor to help rebuild the nation. But as the world has become more interconnected, migration flows have evolved, bringing with them unique challenges. Global crises, wars, and economic downturns have displaced millions, and for many, the UK remains a desirable destination. However, what we're witnessing now is unprecedented. Illegal crossings, especially by small boats across the English Channel, have become a near-daily occurrence, sparking public outcry and calls for immediate action. Promises. This is what citizens have heard repeatedly from political leaders on the topic of border security. As the new administration took office, they made sweeping promises to tackle the growing crisis. The newly appointed Home Secretary committed to presenting a firm plan within 100 days, vowing that these migration issues would no longer be left to fester. This bold claim raised expectations among the public, leading many to hope for a fresh approach that would finally put an end to illegal crossings, tackle backlogged asylum cases, and restore order at the borders. Yet the reality appears to tell a different story. The administration has shifted focus, moving from comprehensive reforms to targeting migrant gangs and smugglers. While combating smuggling networks is essential, it only addresses one aspect of the larger issue. Comprehensive border control involves more than dismantling criminal organizations. It requires a system that efficiently handles asylum claims, safeguards legal pathways for migrants, and establishes clear, enforceable policies for those who attempt to cross the borders illegally. Unfortunately, these key components seem to be missing from the current strategy, leaving citizens wondering if the government's promises were merely words. In an attempt to alleviate the pressure on the immigration system, the government introduced a fast-track policy for asylum seekers from certain high migration nations, including Afghanistan, Syria, and Iran. On the surface, this may sound like a streamlined approach to an overburdened process. However, when we look closer, the data reveals an approval rate so high it raises concerns. For example, around 96% of applicants from Afghanistan are approved, with rates for Syria and Sudan reaching close to 99%. This trend has led critics to argue that the UK's policies have created an incentive structure that actually encourages individuals from specific regions to seek asylum in the UK, knowing there's a high chance of acceptance. What's more, the ability to vet applicants from these countries is limited. Diplomatic tensions and lack of cooperation from certain governments make it nearly impossible to verify the backgrounds of many applicants. This situation is eerily similar to challenges faced by other Western nations, such as the US, where certain countries have faced visa restrictions due to a lack of cooperation in background checks. For the UK, this lax policy could be setting a dangerous precedent, effectively opening the doors for individuals who might not meet the standard criteria for asylum. The strain on public services has become a visible consequence of the government's approach to migration. Across the UK, public sectors like healthcare, education, and housing are facing unprecedented demand. The NHS, already grappling with a shortage of staff and resources, now finds itself overwhelmed as more people enter the system. Schools, too, are dealing with increased classroom sizes and stretched resources, impacting the quality of education that children receive. And housing, already a pressing issue, has become even more competitive, driving up prices and leaving many British citizens struggling to secure affordable living arrangements. This situation is particularly frustrating for legal migrants who have followed the proper channels, waiting patiently for their opportunity to enter the UK. These individuals find themselves overshadowed by a chaotic system that seems to prioritize speed over fairness. For the British communities affected, the sense of betrayal runs deep. They trusted their leaders to uphold a fair and orderly immigration process, but the current reality suggests a system that is anything but orderly. As resources continue to thin out, the question of sustainability looms large. How long can the UK continue to support this influx without significant policy changes? Illegal crossings, particularly by small boats across the English Channel, have surged in recent years, putting border security under immense pressure. In many cases, individuals arriving by these routes bypass the traditional asylum process, which has fueled public frustration. Citizens are witnessing a breakdown in border enforcement and a government seemingly unprepared to address the root of the problem. Although there have been efforts to combat smuggling operations, these do little to address the bigger picture: a lack of firm, clear border policies that deter illegal entry. Countries around the world have faced similar challenges, yet many have implemented measures that the UK has yet to consider. In the US, for instance, stricter entry regulations were imposed on countries unwilling to cooperate in background checks, sending a strong message that illegal crossings would not be tolerated. The UK may need to explore similar policies if it hopes to regain control over its borders. Without decisive action, the cycle of crossings, backlogs, and public frustration will continue. As this crisis grows, the response from the major political parties remains disappointingly similar: largely promises without action. The Conservative Party, traditionally known for its tough stance on immigration, seems to be struggling to implement effective border control measures. Labour, on the other hand, has advocated for a more open approach, but with limited guidance on managing the existing system's flaws. Smaller parties and independent groups have called for various reforms, but none have proposed a solution comprehensive enough to tackle the problem at its root. This lack of political will has left citizens in a state of frustration. Many feel that the migration issue is treated as a political tool rather than a genuine concern impacting British society. The UK needs real reform, a system that upholds the rule of law, respects the rights of those seeking refuge, and ensures that the country's borders are secure. Anything less would be a disservice to both the migrants and the citizens who depend on a functioning immigration system. What you think about it? Please share your thoughts in comments below and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for more, take care and goodbye, and we'll see you in the next video.